So first of all, welcome. Thank you to ARC. Thank you for attending. Today, I want to take you through a little bit of state of play of knowledge management, past, present, and future. And my hope is by the end of this keynote, you'll have some ideas on how you can impact the near future and create what I hope to be is an opportunity for a better future for knowledge management. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is David Griffiths. I am the founder of K3 Cubed. I've been doing knowledge management consulting and advisory service now for the last 12 years. Worked in 17 different countries with some of the world's largest organizations. People often ask me, so tell us something about yourself that gives us a better idea of what you're bringing here. And my favorite story is one in Iceland. I did a keynote similar to this. Well, no, I'm lying to you. It's nothing like this. There was actually an audience I could see. But I was doing a keynote and I was sharing the stage with a psychologist. And I came off my talk and as usually happens, you get questions and it's lovely. And I went into a buffet and I was the last one in. And I finished and I went up and you get those canisters where you put your cutlery. And I went to put my fork down and all the forks were pointing up. And I turned around and put my fork down with the prongs down. And the psychologist turned around to me and said, that tells me a lot about you. He said, that tells me you're a nonconformist, a bit of a rebel, and that comes through in your talk. And I said, no, it's not really. And he said, well, what is it then? And I said, it's just having awareness. It's the fact that actually I was a partner in the Jazz Coffee Bar. And if you go behind the scenes, the staff in there are going to go in and grab the cutlery. When you put the prongs up, it jabs their palm with their hands. When you put the prong down, you help them. And that's what I'm about. I've got a lot of experience that I want to share with you, and it's those insights of what happens behind the scenes that I'm hoping will give you a better insight of what happens now for the future. So I want to start with some reflective questions, and I'm just going to leave these up here for about 10-15 seconds and move them on. As a knowledge manager, what makes you unique? As a knowledge manager, what value do you create for your organization? And lastly, what do you do as a knowledge manager that cannot be automated? What is your comparative advantage? The reason I ask these questions is knowledge management has been struggling for a long time. And I believe that if you look at knowledge management today, it is the product of all the decisions that we have taken to date. All those other knowledge managers in the world that have been around since the 70s and 80s, right the way through to you today, we have created together this thing that is knowledge management. But what is it? And is it good enough? That image that you see on screen is one of my favorite representations of knowledge management to date. It is that extraction of knowledge. We, the knowledge managers, standing on the outside, trying to extract as much knowledge as possible from the subject and externalizing it, making it available to everybody so that it can be accessed whenever we need it and used whenever we need it. The problem that we see is knowledge is a human condition. And if knowledge is a human condition, then how well prepared are we as knowledge managers to actually deal with that? Knowledge management it hasn't really changed. If you look at the history of it, it's been very constrained around some theatre, I'll explain that in a second, communities of practice, and lessons learned. And not much is really changing. So if I look at some of my first interactions with knowledge management around lessons learned, it was the idea that you complete a project, you record the project, the lessons that you believe that you learned on the project. That project could have lasted a number of years, it could have been months. It then goes into a knowledge base and other people can access it. And that's still happening today. Not so long ago, I was working with one of the Europe's top 6 energy companies. And I was called in to look at accelerating learning across the company. And they had decided to do a root and branch review of knowledge management. And when I went in, I asked the question, okay, so what is knowledge management? That hit with a bit of a blank stare. And the second thing I asked was, what are you doing this for? What's the drive? What's the goal? And they couldn't answer it. Now, knowledge management had been going on for a while, but this was about a new view on a knowledge management program. So I sent the head of knowledge management away to talk to his sponsors, to talk about the board members, the champions for this knowledge management program. And I said, really, for us to get going, we need to understand what the drive is. When he came back to me, I was a bit shocked. What had happened was that there was a conversation on a golf course. And during that conversation, one of the board members had been playing golf with somebody from Siemens. Siemens had talked about the glories of their knowledge management program. The board member had come away from that and decided that they needed a better knowledge management program. But they couldn't actually say why. It was just the fact that Siemens had a great knowledge management program and they wanted a better knowledge management program. There was no goal. There was no indicator. There was no sense of something there where there was a gap. There was no sense of a future state. There was no vision of a future state. It was just do something better. As you can imagine, when you then go into an organization and look at a knowledge management program that lacks goals, you probably wouldn't be surprised at what you find. This particular company had invested over 12 months, $1.4 million in a new lessons learned program. And when I met the head of this new lessons learned program, he was waxing lyrical about the fact that 12 months prior, they had 100 lessons learned. They now had 1,400, and it was incredible. And that was the benchmark for them. That was the measurement. That was the value they were bringing to the organization. So when I asked him, how do people feel, the project managers that would be engaging with these lessons learned, how did they feel about it? Didn't know. When I asked about access rates or application of the reuse of the knowledge, didn't know. And from there, you can imagine, we can't then talk about impact, what's changed, what's improved in the organization. So I went out and I spoke to some of the engineers that were engaging with the lessons learned database. And their response was, it's useless. 90% of what's in there, we already know. The other 10%, 90% of people in this organization wouldn't understand what they're on about. So it's absolutely useless. So as line managers, we don't encourage people to use it. We just tell people to talk to somebody. So you've got a lessons learned database that is absolutely useless. And unfortunately, that is still happening today, with whether it be with communities of practice or the theatre that we get. For example, if you look at people leaving an organization, there is a scramble almost, and we're experiencing it now with COVID-19. We're seeing redundancies, furloughs and redundancies, where organizations are responding with knowledge capture events. It's too late. It's theatre. The idea that you can sit down with somebody in an exit interview and spend 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 3 60-minute interviews with them and capture their knowledge and the critical knowledge that they bring to the organization. It's theatre, and it really doesn't add value. If you find it, if you find critical knowledge, it's by luck, not by design. And that's my challenge to you. What's really changing? But on the other hand, I might actually be talking rubbish. So I want to go back a little. 1995. Some of the questions that were being asked. What is knowledge management? Can you answer that question at the moment? So I was out with a pharmaceutical company just before lockdown. And I asked them this question: what is knowledge management to your organization? You're the knowledge management experts. Define it, explain it to me quickly. Can you do it? Or do you end up waffling a little bit? The next thing, why do we need knowledge management? Because when things are going well, pre-COVID-19, and there's budget, then it's very easy to have good ideas and for good ideas to stick around. The moment that we're put under pressure, when budgets are pinched, when resources are scarce, then unfortunately good ideas go out the window and the resource goes to value creating entities. And if we can't answer why we need knowledge management, if we don't have goals, if we can't demonstrate value, it's out the window. Who is responsible for knowledge management? If that answer is you, knowledge management's going to fail. Because if knowledge management is not seen as something that is a natural part of doing business, a natural part of the day-to-day, then unfortunately it is you, and knowledge management will go out the window because it is something that is done in addition to the regular job. Why should I do it? I haven't got time to do knowledge management. The next thing, how do we measure the influence, impact, and value of knowledge management? If I was to put you on the spot today and ask you, put a dollar amount, a sterling amount, on the value of knowledge management created in your organization, could you do it? If the answer is no, what are you going to do about it? Because you are at risk. Now, this was 1995. This can't be true anymore. All right, we're 25 years down the road. So this is Deloitte 2020. This is their Deloitte Insights, the Global Human Capital Trend Survey for 2020. A bit of a distressing thing. If you look at the top, knowledge management is defined as sharing knowledge by documenting and disseminating. Back to that picture of the knowledge managers on the outside extracting knowledge, preserving knowledge, creating knowledge is only at 43%, and deriving value from knowledge, actually tying knowledge to action, actually reusing it, actually applying it, creating impact. Impact being I took something and I created a change for better, 36%. Very interesting. The biggest opportunity in knowledge management is 82% of respondents saying that they need to do a better job of tying knowledge to action. Now, does that concern you a little bit? Put yourself in the position of a board member, a chief exec. Does it concern you that not 82% of respondents to this survey say they need to do a better job of tying knowledge to action? Does that suggest that we're not doing it? Because that's what's been happening in the past. It seems it's still happening today. So that's interesting. Can I just say that's very interesting? We've lost number 3, but don't worry. So if you want the must-do secrets from KM Past, I call them worst practice case studies. 1, become a KM specialist. A KM specialist, generally knowledge managers don't set out to be knowledge managers. They're project managers, learning and development managers. They are engineers, scientists that fall into a knowledge management space. Lawyers, solicitors fall into that knowledge management category. They haven't really trained as knowledge managers, and they become knowledge management specialists. And that specialism links to what their specialism is, whether that's an engineer, a project manager, etc. Knowledge managers need to be generalists. You need to be influencers that can bring together IT, human resources, subject matter experts, operationalists. It's not about becoming an IT expert, a communities of practice expert. The second worst practice, create solutions in search of problems. Put yourself in a bubble, come up with the best knowledge management ideas, and then roll it out to the organization and look for problems to solve with your great idea. That is the best, worst practice case study I can recommend. What we're talking about here is the fact that actually for knowledge management to work, we need to go out and we need to engage and involve the workforce in what the real world problems are. But not only the problems of today, because you're almost reacting, it could be too late. It's having the signals, being able to detect, have an awareness, make sense of the environment to anticipate what those needs may be and bring people along by engaging and involving them. The third thing is make yourself a KM cook. What I mean by that is that you will go out and you will follow past case studies, past best practice, and you will apply it as current best practice, current case studies, and they don't fit in your organization. And this links to becoming a KM specialist, because actually we can all pick up a recipe book. I did this last night. Got to share this with you. I picked up a recipe book from Mexico, loved it. Did this nacho recipe, took 2 hours to make it, and I've got to tell you, it was one of the worst things I've ever put together. Family loved it, apparently, didn't really, but the idea being that I went through the recipe, but I couldn't replicate what was actually on the page. There's no way it tasted the way it was described. It was just stodge. And that's the problem. A chef would be able to identify where it went wrong, would be able to correct it mid-flow, would be able to adapt. A KM cook can't do it because they're just following a recipe that they don't necessarily understand. I want to take you on a KM countdown. This is a KM countdown to success. These are my 5 tips, if you like, for the present that help you build for the future. First of all, a complete knowledge manager. A complete knowledge manager needs to be able to offer leadership. They need to be a strategic provocateur. They need to make sense of the wider environment and see the opportunities, not the challenges and the problems, the opportunities. They need to be a functional expert. They need to be able to both respond to the challenges within the work environment, but also anticipate them and create something new, innovate. They need to be an advocate. They need to start from a position of empathy. They need to be in a position where they are trusted by the workforce. They engage, they involve them, and they become an advocate for their needs, both current and future. But also, they need to be a value creator. They need to be able to rapidly sense what is happening in the environment, and they need to be able to identify opportunities revolving around safety, time, innovation, quality, cost, customer employee experience, something that I refer to as sticky problems. There are 4 functions of knowledge management. If your knowledge management program project is not looking at all 4 areas, then you have an opportunity to improve. It is about acquisition. You can call it embedding, you can call it storing, but it's acquiring valuable knowledge, not just from the past and the present, but looking to the future. What do you need to acquire? Where are the gaps? Where are the opportunities? It's about offering the opportunity to share. It's about applying it, and it's about developing it. And knowledge management, an excellent knowledge management program, can respond to all 4 areas and report in all 4 areas. And they can report about impact in all 4 areas. Remember, impact is about change. 3, knowledge management has to respond across 3 key domains. If it is not responding across all 3 domains, then again, there is a massive opportunity for you to evolve. The simple domain, that is the world of the simple question and answer, one right response. It's widely known, but you don't know it, okay? It could be something like, how do I get paid in this organization? You can go to a knowledge base, you can go to a virtual assistant, and you can get a quick response because there is only one right response. At the moment, artificial intelligence is very, very good in this area, machine learning. The bots, the virtual assistants, they're fantastic in this particular area. The complicated world, there are better or worse responses. We know what the outcome will be, we know we'll get there, but there are better or worse ways to get there. So if I was to say to you, we're all going to fly to New York, we're going to get off the plane, and I want you to drive to Seattle by the quickest route possible. You'll get there with enough money, with enough resource, with enough time, you'll get there. But every junction in the road, every decision point, there you can make a better or worse decision. Here, you can bring in somebody to run alongside you. You could bring in technology, such as a sat-nav, but as we know, they're fallible. We can bring in a subject matter expert. We can bring in a logistics expert who's been doing this for 10 years, for UPS, that can turn around and tell us, look, we know at this time, if you hit this junction at this time in these weather conditions, this is what we would do. We know that we see lots of accidents at this particular junction or on this stretch of the road, so therefore we tend to avoid it. So you can make better or worse decisions. We'll get there. But what do you do within your knowledge spaces to bring together people and objects to accelerate that type of process? In the complex space, there is no known answer. Why do you love? Why do you feel motivated to go and take on a project? What does the future of knowledge management look like? What will knowledge management practice look like in 10 years' time? We don't know the answer. It's emergent. It's something that we try and collect as many different views as possible: political, economical, social, technological, environmental, legal, demographic information, pull it all together, and we try to make best sense of our environment. We then take safe step forwards where our view of the world seems to be right. We amplify it, we move forward more. Where it doesn't seem correct, we quickly dampen it down and retreat. But how do you swarm the knowledge, the people around those types of complex challenges in your organization when you don't know the answers? This is greenfield knowledge. What do those spaces look like? And if you have a gap in any one of those spaces, you have an immense opportunity. Two critical ingredients. Without either one of these, you are finished. If you don't have a goal, and if you don't have trust. If you are not trusted, and you are not trustworthy, and you don't have trust within your organization, remember that knowledge is a human condition, and without that, you will never, ever be able to optimize knowledge flows. Critical success factor. It is value creation. It is about rapid sense making. It is about fair processes. For you to understand whether knowledge management is working, think of anything you're working on at the moment. If I was coming in to look at your organization, the first thing we look at is how do people feel? If they feel overwhelmingly positive, you're on good ground. If they feel negative, you're on shaky ground. We then look at access and application. So how are people accessing knowledge, whether it's people or objects? But more than that, how are they taking it away and using it? From there, we have discussions around impact. What changed? It's great that you feel good, great that you're accessing it, great that you're applying it, but what's changing? And for that, we link it to safety, time, innovation, quality, cost, and experiences. From there, from that change, we can talk about results because everybody wants to talk about money. And we can get down to results. Once we understand the change, we can get down to costs. And then, if you get a fair enough sample, I can get you and you can get you to return on investment. But ultimately, it's about how you take intellectual, social, and human capital and create market value. And if you're not able to have those conversations, you have an incredible opportunity now to accelerate out of this current space and into a new future of knowledge management. Because knowledge management is the product of all decisions that have been taken to date. The decisions you take now, those are the decisions that will create our future. If you do nothing, then what does that mean for the future of knowledge management? Because as the slides have shown you, from 1995 to 2020, we're still talking about the same challenges.
And with that, I think, David, do you mind if I just, we take a moment's pause just to come in with some questions which exactly reflected on what you just said a few moments ago?
Absolutely, go for it.
Right. We're about halfway through the session. I thought it'd be time for a chance for the interval act, if you like, where I come in with some questions, David, and you ask them. And there's one question that comes from me looking at the trends I've seen in this session you've mentioned so far, and one specific question which ties in with what you just said before I butted in. The question that I want to put generally is around trust. You've mentioned trust several times, how you get trust between the knowledge manager and the people whose knowledge, whose actions will follow that knowledge. And an interesting debate you can have broader, because we're right in the middle of a public health crisis. There's got to be trust on the information that we're giving from really, if you like, knowledge management officials right at the top of the country. So how do you get that trust going? That's the first one. Have a think about that. Secondly, this comes from a specific person in the audience. And this refers back to the, you said the Deloitte report, you know, going back to 1995, we still have unanswered questions. And it says, and the question I thought was pertinent to what you just said, why are the 1995 questions still unanswered today in many organizations? And the person asked, in my experience, most people see KM as a vague concept. Why? So it's really one question about trust, one question about what's happened since 1995.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I'll share a quick story. So I've just as we came out of lockdown, I finished the report in lockdown. I've been working with a government organisation that is it's all about influence. So their job is to influence decision makers and to create change in the way that the decision makers and the public think. And they had a massive knowledge management program. And what they had done is they had lifted ISO 30401 and the UK Gov Knowledge Principles document and created a lovely knowledge management strategy. But all they'd done is lift, cut and paste and put it in. It had no meaning. It talked about the what, but the what had no meaning. Nobody could talk about how they were going to do anything. It was just a nice document. And unfortunately, there's too much of that in knowledge management. It's that lack of understanding of the how. That's where it all falls to pieces, which is where I say that actually knowledge managers, instead of being these hyper specialists in a certain area, have got to become generalists and have wider influence. The second thing is my last couple of slides today, I will give you the secrets of trust. I have 2 slides on trust waves that is from a gentleman called Covey. And I use it a lot, and it will give you some things to reflect on, and you can see how you can take it forward. Is that good, Nick? Keep going? Yep. Okay. So I want to take you into a little bit of the future. If you look at KM World, this is looking to the future of KM that came out in January 20. You can see it's free on the internet. They're talking about AI and they're talking about virtual assistants. It's lovely. So let's talk about this a little bit. My daughter, this is my daughter, by the way. She's 9. And about 4 months ago, we had an opportunity to go away, and it meant my daughter coming out of school. So I said to her that she could come out of school, but she had to do some work first. So she had to do some maths specifically to be able to take a half day off school to come away with us. And she took her maths away, and I didn't really think about it. Just gave her the book, said do 3 pages. She went away and she came back, and I got to the 3rd page. Don't forget she was 8 at the time. She had to take fractions and convert them to decimals to 3 places. So for example, she had to take 1/32 or 1/89 and convert it. Now, she's smart, but she did this without a calculator and with no workings out. So I had a chat with her and said, okay, so how did you do this? And she said, oh, I just worked it out in my head, Dad. I can just do this. Now, at this point, I'm like, I love my daughter, but she's not a genius, okay? So I said, okay, no problem at all. So I asked her the questions back. Do you know something? She'd memorized them all. She'd memorized the answers to the questions. So at that point, I said, no problem. I'm going to give you some new ones, similar fractions, and you can do them in your head for me right now. And she couldn't. She didn't get one right. Now, for those of you who have children, this descends into a very frustrating conversation. Did you cheat? Did you look at the answers in the back? No, Dad. Now, did you look at the answers in the back? No, Dad. Okay, so explain to me, how did you do this? I just did it, Dad, it's in my head. All right, but you can't do it, so you must have cheated. No, didn't do it, Dad. You've talked to me about cheating, it's bad, I'd never cheat. Okay, so show me how you do the working out. Can't do it. And we hit a point of total and utter breakdown. She was immovable that she did not cheat, and I was immovable that you must have cheated. You cannot negotiate that point. And you know something? Those of you who are parents, I coach all the time, and I forget to go to a coaching mode with my own daughter. So I decided to. I retreated. 30 minutes later, I came back. We went through a coaching approach, and she broke down and she said, Dad, I didn't cheat. I didn't use a calculator. I didn't look at the answers in the back of the book. I asked Siri. And it made me reflect, what are we doing as knowledge managers to prepare for a world that is going to ask Siri? And what happens when Siri can't answer the questions? When we build knowledge management systems today, in my experience, too much energy is put into responding to the past, looking at case studies, what's gone before, and we'll repeat it now. What are the challenges that we're facing today? And I'll respond to those, but those challenges are already moving on. If you're building a knowledge management system that you want to be resilient, then are you engaging the workforce to find out what that system should look like? But more importantly, are you talking to university students that will be graduating in the next 2-3 years? It doesn't matter. because they are the people that will be coming into your organization and using your systems. Do they actually meet their needs? And I have yet to meet an organization that has thought in that way. They are so caught in their own bubble of their own organization and responding to that rear view mirror that they're not investing the time to look to the future to ensure that they're building something that can last, that will bring resilience, that will create ongoing value. And I give you that as a challenge. I've said to you, the future of KM is about the decisions you take today. AI is definitely having an impact, but it is slower than expected, but it is accelerating. It is experiencing exponential growth. I'm not going to go through the data. I'm more interested in trying to get to some of the things you can do, but I will take questions if you're interested. I was going to show you a video, but taking the break in the middle, I've decided not to. What I will say to you is that other fields, such as aspects of the profession, such as HR, they're getting blindsided at the moment. When I asked you at the start, what do you do that cannot be automated? HR would come back with the scenario of we do recruitment, we do employee engagement, we do professional development. We are a question and answer base. People come to us for advice. There are now one-stop solutions. So I was about to show you a virtual assistant called Moon that does the full onboarding process. It takes an employee and you don't have to engage with a human. Any question you might want about HR, it can answer it for you. It engages with you on a regular basis. It analyzes text inputs to try and gauge how happy you might be. It anticipates that you might be struggling if you didn't have a pay rise. It's close to your birthday and somebody else that you're close to just got promoted. It sees you as a risk. That's what AI is doing at the moment. However, AI has a problem. At the moment, it can talk to you about how, when, where, and who very effectively, but it doesn't do a very good job of talking about what made you do something or why you did something. What made you take that decision? Think of a powerful decision or a big decision you've made recently. Why did you make that decision, or what brought you to make that decision? AI is not doing a very good job because it's complex. There are lots of variables that come together. They connect in different ways, have a variety of connectivity, and ultimately it can't tell us that. That's the human advantage. That's where we see things that AI cannot see. But are you practicing that? Do you see it? Or are you constrained by your own skill set? Because if you don't see knowledge as a human condition, then you will miss the opportunity to engage with humans. You will miss the opportunity to understand how the past impacts the future, the cognitive processes, how we accelerate learning, how we develop trust. Those are the things that will actually accelerate knowledge flows in your organization beyond technology, because technology, if you don't have the input, the output's rubbish. So I want to get to some of the things that you can do. First of all, I do a lot of work with organizations that look at network maps, and they look at influence within network maps. Traditionally, they look at people. All right, so each person is a node in the network map, and they will look at connections within the network. There is a missed opportunity here, because networks are technology, they are people, and they are the objects that people create. Standard operating procedures, policies, PowerPoints, even notes on Yammer. Basically, those objects are creating as much influence as the person. And we need to understand, as a knowledge manager, where do we go quickly to accelerate influence? Where are we receiving resistance within the network? How do we need to counter that resistance? It is a game of influence, and you are influencing people. People are the active node. They are agents within the system. They determine whether they engage or whether they resist. What are you doing to understand your network in terms of technology, objects, and people? Because if you are not considering the objects people create, you are missing the opportunity, and you are missing a critical element in the influence of knowledge flows. The next thing, I've been doing a lot of work around basically portals. And one of the biggest challenges that we have are multi-layered portals. It takes a long time to get anywhere. And what we are looking at the moment is something called insight rooms. So I've been working with pharmaceutical companies, energy companies, and government organizations around how do we reveal as much of the system whole, the whole environment of the organization in one place. And we're calling these spaces insight rooms. So you can see from this quick diagram, it can be around locations, it can be around functions, but it allows people to take control of where they go and allows them to explore their curiosity. It allows them to find serendipitous moments so they can go where they need to go, but they can explore other aspects. It plays into things like self-determination theory. And this goes back to the idea of the human. It is the human that is interacting with the technology. They want to feel in control of what they're doing. They want to feel as though there is transparency, and they choose where they interact and how they interact. For them to do that, they've got to feel competent. So we've got to make it as simplistic as possible and as open as possible and present it with as much openness as possible. They've also got to feel like they relate to what's going on. So it is personal to them. It is something that they feel a connection to it. It's not just something that's presented to them, it's a connection they feel. Something that is that sense of intrinsic motivation over the extrinsic. And we call that CAR. And that is about being competent, they have autonomy, and they relate to what's going on. And that is the challenge. How do we present the full spectrum of opportunities that are available in your organization and the challenges being opportunities that exist within your organization? You're looking at the technology side. That is your big challenge going forward to the future. That idea of an insight room that reveals, that unveils the whole as simply and as quickly as possible. The next thing, this is about perspective. Traditionally, you remember I talked about theatre at the start of this. It's the idea that an employee is leaving the organization, they hold, they've got lots of experience, they've got critical knowledge. We're now going to take them through exit interviews, whether that's planned over 90 days, 100 days, whatever it might be, or whether it's a shock and you've got to quickly jump in. What brings you to do that? And I ask that question because you're putting all the resource into extracting knowledge from somebody that is coming into an interview situation, sitting with subject matter experts, where, go back to that initial image, it's about extracting knowledge in a situation where they might not even be willing. Instead, can you shift the lens? What stops you going to the people that that person works with, their team, their colleagues, and teaching them and giving them the tools to take them through a knowledge acquisition process? So what we do, this has actually come out of work we did with a hospital system in the US, where they needed to accelerate learning in nursing teams. So basically their nursing teams or their ER teams would swarm, so it wasn't always the same team, and they needed to quickly access the knowledge, and they needed to understand when there were gaps what they should do, but also then what should we do about the things we're not aware of. It's great when we are aware that we don't have something, but what do we do when we're not aware? So we gave them this as a kind of mental model, if you like. When you know things, when you both know things, so if you think of yourself and a colleague, when you know something and you're aware of your colleague knows it as well, it's about enriching, okay? When you know that you don't know something, so I'm working with Nick as a knowledge manager, and I become aware that Nick has an advantage on me. He knows something that I don't know. There's a gap in my knowledge. Next time I go onto a project and Nick's not available, I've got a problem because we're limited. So it's now up to me to act quick to plug that gap. However, there's a lot that we don't know, okay? Nick will know things that I'm not even aware of, all right? But that's his advantage. But I've got to be curious enough to put into place methods, techniques, little things that I can do to expose that knowledge, give me the signal that it's there, and allow me to take next steps. Then there's the fact that Nick there Nick is just his subject matter expertise is so high that he has blind spots. He doesn't even know he knows it. They are so routine to him, they're so automatic that he doesn't actually think about it consciously anymore. So he won't even know that he knows it. And even if I sit down and interrogate him, he won't even think about it. So what can we do? If we use this as a framework, what can we do? So we gave, with hospital system, we gave them 6 different things to 6 different approaches. And these are things you can take away and start using today, okay? Ask what, not how. All right, Nick, how did the meeting go with Dave today? Fine. Nick's busy. Fine, good. Yeah, you give an automatic response. Nick, what was the one key thing that came out of David's keynote today? It's a different response, just shifting from how to what. Even if Nick is extremely busy, we have engaged systems 2 thinking. We have got him to sit there and or pause and invest energy in the response. There is a greater likelihood that we are going to get more interesting information from that second perspective. Ask what, not why. Why did you do that? Think of a knowledge management lessons learned program. Why did you take that decision? Why tends to have negative connotations, puts people on the defensive, okay? When they're on the defensive, they start to question trust, your motives, your agenda, okay? Instead, soften it. What brought you to take that decision at that moment in time? Not why did you take that decision at that moment in time? So wherever you can, replace why with what. Use the power of if. If you want to explore creativity, if we had a magic wand and we could do absolutely anything to solve this challenge, what would we do? If we could take a magic wand, if I made you chief exec today, all right, and you could do anything to create new opportunities for this organization, what would you do? Use if then. If X happens, then what might happen? It's exploring unintended consequences. So if we go and do this, then what might be the consequences? Next thing, take a lesson from improv acting. Rejection is wrong. The moment that you reject somebody, they start to retreat. We accept things. So when you're in meetings, never mind how busy that meeting might be, instead of turning around to somebody and saying, yeah, Nick, sorry, Nick, I'm picking on you because you're the only person I can see. But instead of turning around and going, Nick, yeah, no, we can't do that, mate. We're going to go with Jane's idea, okay? It's just dismissed out of hand. You'll shut them down, they'll retreat, and they begin to question trust. And I'll get back to that in a minute. Instead,
if I can interrupt for a second. Sorry, David. No, now I'm picking on you because there was something I wanted to come back to. I'm sort of another kind of interval act that's come up. If you around, I wanted to get in there in case we run out of time. We've got about 10 minutes left. Data versus decision making and trust. I think you're coming back to a theme that I'm seeing in this, and this wants to be my takeaway, and in actual fact inform some of the debate for the rest of the week. As it happens, we've got a session on Tuesday afternoon, which is looking at data and decision making, and it's your mention of it is timely. When do we make decisions? How much data do we need? Where is the demarcation between one and the other? When do humans make good decisions and when can they be trusted? And I think that's a comment I think we're going to see on and off during the remainder of the week, David. I think it's a good comment that you're touching on there.
Yeah, so I'll give you very quickly, if you go back to the 3 domains, first of all, data and decision making in the simple domain. Which side of the road do we drive on in the UK? Nice and easy, no problem. We could highly trusted. The more complicated, the more decisions that need to be taken with better or worse outcomes, that becomes challenging. Also, how much do we trust artificial intelligence when the data that artificial intelligence is making its decision on is questionable in the first place? So, for example, Amazon decided to bring in artificial intelligence in their recruitment and succession planning process. They found after 3 years that it had a heavy bias towards male employees because there was an inherent bias in the previous decision making that it was learning from. And so the bias, they had to shut it down because there was a bias towards male employees within the system already. So we have to be careful here with artificial intelligence, because where is artificial intelligence getting the data from, and what programming is it using to make its decisions? We are fallible, but it's basing its decisions on fallible data. We've got a problem, or a challenge, or an opportunity. What I would say is that I'm a little concerned at how much we want to defer to artificial intelligence, or the concept that actually we will just spin it over. It's ultimately humans that are still making the decisions. So I've been involved around some work with COVID-19 that I've been able to see firsthand that politics between England, Scotland and Wales is crippling the sharing of data, because data is being now weaponized as a political weapon. And I'm not going to give you access to the data that you really need, because actually it's valuable to us and we're going to get one step ahead of you. How risky is that? Where does that sit with trust? Which brings me to finishing up. Rejection is wrong. Accept something. All right. So accept an opinion. Nick, Nick, that's got a lot of value. I can see where you're going from with that. I was wondering if you also considered this, and now I can introduce my opinion. The final thing, trust. Never ask a question that you won't answer yourself. So this is, if somebody turns around to you and says, Nick, I'm taking over from you. Who's the weakest link in the team? And if you turn around to me and say, Dave, well, you've been around here for a while, what's your opinion? And I don't answer the question, then there is no trust between us. And it's very unlikely that Nick will respond with anything that's worthwhile. Right, on to the trust waves. And if you'll bear with me a second. So this trust wave starts with self-trust, moves to relationship trust, and then ends in organizational trust. Ultimately, it's about integrity. I mean, I'm not going to go through all the aspects of the slide, you're going to get them, but it is about your intent, your motive, your agenda and behavior, and it's about your skills basket. It's about your beliefs, your attitudes, your skills, your knowledge, experience, and talent. The opportunities you see to exploit those areas for good, and the challenges you see in gaps in those areas that you need to bring other people to be involved with you. Ultimately, trust is about being both trusting, giving trust, and trustworthy. Other people are willing to give you their trust. It is about the fact that you have integrity, that it is very clear what your intent is. And it's clear how you develop results, the way that you get results. What does it say about you? The way that you build processes and systems. Is it about governing people, or is it about involving and engaging people? Finally, trust wave 2 is about relationship trust. All these areas are key. It's your ability, if you go back to those 5 key areas on the ultimate knowledge manager or the complete knowledge manager, there is some fantastic work that has been done with the FBI around behavioral change. And ultimately, it comes down to your ability to be an active listener, to create empathy, through building empathy to create rapport, through having empathy and rapport creating influence, and through that influence, you can create behavioral change. If you don't have any of those areas, if you don't respond to these areas of relationship trust, then you will not be seen as being trustworthy, and you won't be seen as being very trusting. This is your challenge not only for yourselves as knowledge managers, but this is your challenge within your wider organization. I don't like speaking about culture, because I believe culture is a big pink fluffy bunny that we give a kicking when something's going wrong. I prefer to talk about process, procedure, behaviors, attitudes, and when you get into those types of areas, this is usually what we're talking about. Thank you very much for listening to me today. Hopefully you have left with an idea of things, or a view that the decisions taken today can be improved, that you have lots of opportunities in front of you. Some of them are conceptual, such as the Insights Room. Some of them are very practical, such as 6 powerful questions. Otherwise, over to you. Thank you very much for having me.
David, and a big thanks for you too and all your efforts. And to kick off the week's proceedings, we've just got a question coming in about how we're going to handle contact after the event, and I'll come back to that later. But I just want to thank you for your contribution this morning. For me, and this is the takeaway that's going to come out of this, that I'll be putting in the subsequent sessions, just to let you know how what you've said is kind of informing the debate. I think there's the thing around the data, decision making, and trust. I think there's some of the things that we might be coming up, especially as we are now working remotely, and for instance, me, where I work in an office and I have that visual contact, because we're working remotely, the gathering and distribution of data and the trust that goes with it in this remote working environment. And you talked about the data. Yeah, David, you need to come in there.
Yeah, so I've got something called 5 Vs. We deal with this a lot with organizations, whether it's 5 Vs. I'll send, if you want it, Nick, I'll send it through. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
It's just a, excuse me, a quick infographic, but it covers things like velocity, validity, variety.
David, if you want to add that, because just to let everybody know, we'll be sending out the presentations after this session. David, if you want to add that infographic to your own set of slides, we can make that available afterward.
Yeah, because it covers off a lot of the data side of things.
Yeah.
You know, for example, for those of you who are listening, that idea of data in the simple domain, actually, it's like playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the easy question. We know that if we ask the audience, that actually we're going to get an overwhelming response towards the right answer. But that data changes. The more difficult the question, the more scarce the knowledge.
Yes.
And that we get a variety of data. That becomes confusing. But at the same time, when we're in the complex space, what's the future of knowledge management? We want a variety of data. So we ask 2 different questions almost. Do we have enough, or do we have too much?
David, we've got about a couple of minutes left. I'm going to probably take that as a point to draw the matters. Oh, one more question coming in. Sorry. Also for the rest of the presenters, would it be okay to ask questions via LinkedIn?
Be a pleasure. Be a pleasure, please.
Yeah, I'm connecting with. Yeah, sorry, David.
I was going to say, because I'm talking to Nick at the moment. The rest of the screen is blank. So what I would say to you is that if you want to connect, please reach out. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active. You'll see a lot of the work I do around the human aspects, if you like. If you've got further questions, I will gladly take the time to answer them. Yeah. And I will be around. I'm working Tuesday, Wednesday, but I am around on Thursday. So if you see me around on the chat rooms, the participants, please let me know.
And this question goes out to everybody. If you can't find David on LinkedIn for whatever bizarre reason, and I had no trouble at all, get in contact with Mel or me, and we will put you in touch with David. It will be our pleasure. There. Well, we've got
fantastic.
Left. But you can find David on LinkedIn. It's easy.
We made it. David. Can I say we made it? Thank you very much, everybody, for putting up with me. It has been, it's always interesting talking to a screen. Usually it's much better face to face and being able to
That's the one thing I'm used to. David, thanks so much for your time this morning. We're going to ask everybody to log out of Zoom, so that allows us to operationally reset and capture the chat from this particular session, which we'll be sending out to you, David, afterward. And we look forward to seeing everybody at 11:30 with James and Jamini. And I look forward to you. David, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Cheers, everybody. Thank you.